March 26, 2019. That's when the first Trails video went out on the channel. That's how long this series has been present on the channel. 3 years it's been a thing on the channel. And it's been fun. Which is why this video exists. It deserves its own video. After the point we've got to now, it's very much sort of like a stopping point. It deserves a video where we discuss stuff. It very much does. So let's start here. First and foremost with thoughts on Cold Steel 4, because that's what we've reached the end of, so let's begin. Overall, definitely a good game. Is it the best one in the series? Probably not. I still fall on third in that regard. Definitely feel third is up there because it's just got a sort of finality to it. This one has a little bit towards the end, and this one does build on things that you've had in the past, and it's lovely. And this conclusion towards the end, very nice, but third's still a preference for me, I'd say, in that regard. But overall, Cold Steel 4, definitely a good game. Definitely a good entry to the series, and I like what they did here. Music was generally good. Some fantastic callbacks to some previous music we've had across Cold Steel, and some of the previous arcs as well. Some fantastic callbacks. But that one annoying song kept pulling me out of the game. You know, the one where it had that weird noise effect. It's like, could you just... I know what you were trying to go for, but don't, because it pulls me out of the game rather than keeps me invested. It's like, The actual graphics of the game, it's that case of the engine is showing its age, and I know there is a new engine coming, and I am looking forward to that. That's something I am looking forward to in the future games from Falcom. I want to see what they can do there, so very much looking forward to that. But I'd also say it's a shame, even though, they're using an older engine and stuff like that. It's a shame they didn't bring stuff from Cold Steel 1 and Cold Steel 2 into Cold Steel 4. I know they did in certain areas here and there, but it would have been nice if we visited more areas. I understand, the limit on time and budget and stuff like that. I get it, don't worry. But it still would have been nice, wouldn't it? It's understandable, but still would have been nice. I think we can all agree on that. One aspect of Cold Steel 4 that I think most people agree with this idea, the curse, especially in Act 2, could have been explored a bit better. I feel like they should have really gone into depth of certain aspects of the effect it's having on people and how you can sort of get around it. The whole music situation was a very good thing, and it would have been nice to have that explored more in depth, rather than just a repeat of information of, oh, it's the curse caused this, oh, it's the curse caused this, oh, it's the curse that caused this. It's like, yeah, I know it is. That bit is obvious at this point. Please, can you explore that? That's what I wanted a bit more in Act 2. And again, they could have done that a bit more with the idea of going to different places. You know, it would be nice if we actually did go back to La Burle. Just for a little bit. Just for a little bit. Just to Bose. It would have been nice. But, just stuff like that. They could have elevated the game just a bit more. Again, understandable, but it could have made Act 2 much, much better. What other aspects would I actually disagree on? I'd say the fake out deaths. I've mentioned this several times. It's, again, people not dying is not the issue. People dying and then coming back. It's that fake out, being like, oh, they're dead, and then they're not. They did that too many times, and it lessens the impact, especially if you're going to go back through the games, and I probably will at some point myself, because I have learned across the series that replaying the series is actually very, very good for you. Very good for you. I would recommend it. So having that idea of the fake out deaths just not having that same impact as just deaths is an issue, because people do die in the game. There are people who just die and that's it. They're gone. But there's too many fake out ones. Oliver being the key one. Everybody knew. You could tell he wasn't dead. He was clearly coming back. It was still fantastic when he came back, but the whole fake out situation, it's you could have handled that better. I think one of the best examples of a fake out death was probably actually over at like Cold Steel 2, where it's very much that case of like, the Chancellor, from my perspective, I didn't know, obviously, because parts of other games spoiled this, but just the fact he isn't dead. That's technically a fake out death, but it's for the purpose of the story developing. And being like, oh, he's immortal in that aspect. That's the kind of stuff you needed, where you didn't really have that aspect going forward. It's just like, oh, they're not really dead. Okay, they got saved, yay. It's like, nah. That's probably an issue. It'd probably need to be addressed, really. But I will say, like, this was a great send-off to Erebonia, the cast across LeBeau, Crossbell. You even get Anton having like a proper send-off and stuff like that. I mean, we've still got, obviously, Hajimari or Reverie, however you want to call it, coming, but it's still like a nice finality to the story that's happened. It reminds me very much of like how I felt at the end of SC. Like, sure, there's still more to come. We got third from SC. But it's just sort of like the story that we were going through, that's come to an end. And that's a nice send-off to that story that was happening. Probably a nice send-off, I'd say, to Osborne. Like, understanding what he's been doing the entire time. It's just a nice cap on that story. Still more to come, obviously, still more to come, but very much a nice cap. So I'd say that's my thoughts on Cold Steel 4, so next section, which I know people do enjoy. So, where do we begin on the theories? Multiple worlds. It's been a thing I've been thinking about for a long while. I'm trying to think when the first instance of me thinking about such a thing came up. I mean, I know it was there with the Cypress Trees book in Sky. Definitely was an aspect I was thinking about then. I think it just expanded from there to the point we're at now, where it's like we've seen multiple worlds. We've seen them. Because if you think at the start of like Cold Steel 1, Cold Steel 3, a lot of like the Crossbell games, they're multiple worlds. We see one ending here in Cold Steel 4. Green Crow Millium died then. And they saved the world. Yeah, that's one solution from a world. That's a true ending for that world. I still believe that world exists within the grand canon of this whole thing. It's like, that world exists out there. It's not the world we're following going forward, but that world still exists. Both endings are true endings. It's a different branch of a tree, a different branch of a timeline. The way this is probably signified is with Kia mentioning at one point that we were on the final branch, and that's we're on the true route within the game anyway. The final ending that we got, and that was the final branch according to Kia. And we know how she's very aware of causality and stuff like that. So that's what I think's going on there. Like, we've been seeing different paths. But this does bring me on to my next point about Sepith memories. We've seen throughout, like, there's memories can be transferred through the Sepith veins and all that type of stuff. It's been a key aspect, a key important thing. And I've mentioned at several points that I do feel that's going to hit a head at some point. It's going to come up with the idea of, if you have enough information from these Sepith veins, if you have the information, this collective information of live stream, essentially. I'm trying to avoid using the word live stream, but it's essentially the live stream idea. But if you have enough information from that, you can predict how things will go, how they will be. You will understand causality to a massive point that you can predict the future. The more you know, the more you can do that. It just makes sense. Like, if you understand the human condition on such a grand scale, you could figure out everything that was going to happen in the future. But there's another aspect that I feel is somehow connected to that. If you become so connected to humankind that you understand them so much, and you hook up an artificial being that does that, like Kia, they're going to become human on a massive degree. And that's essentially what happened to Kia. She became human through her experience and understanding of people's lives. But she also understood causality and stuff like that. So I'm very much thinking the idea that I threw out, that as a result of that, there's going to be this technological singularity approaching. where stuff like AI, homunculi are going to become as real as any other human on Zemuria. But where that goes from there, I don't know. But the one theory that I have now is very much like, what's happening elsewhere with the Sephid veins, though? Because we know in the east, there's a desert that's growing. Essentially, it's just a desert that's growing. What does that mean going forward? And with everything we know now, I believe the idea of the firmament, which is something I had in my head for ages, but yeah, the firmament, the barrier around the world, is weakening. Why it's weakening, there could be many theories about that, but I do believe it is weakening, but I don't think it's weakening to the idea of like, well, then something's going to puncture through it, and it will result in a salt pale, because that was like something just came through. Not like that. I think it's very much a weakening, so divergent laws and the laws on Zemuria, like the fundamental laws of how the world works, are starting to get mixed. And life as we know it can't exist in that kind of situation, and therefore dies out, which would then result in it turning to a desert. And eventually, once the entire barrier, the firmament, weakens and then disappears, everything returns to a primordial nothingness. Yeah, that's how I think it all ties together there with what's going on with Erebonia. But they know about this, clearly. They know about that idea. Erebonia's plan is based around this idea that everything's going to be returned to primordial nothingness. But I don't think they're going to try and save the world. I think they are clearly trying to save the souls and bring them to a new world or reset the world. Another cypress tree. That's what I'm thinking. It's like, save everyone in a way that it can be transferred or moved somewhere else. The world is doomed, we can't save it. That's what I think they're going with. It's like they're doing as much as they can to save as many people as they can. And the only way they can do that is by removing the Septarians, because that buys them time. That's what I'm thinking is going on there. But how would they know that is going to happen unless they were also linked to everything in regards to the causality theories that I've been throwing out? I still feel like the Grandmaster is somehow Mirage. And Mirage obviously has a connection to causality. We know that because of what we've experienced. But I don't think it's Mirage from this world. It's either a previous world or another world. Like, has the world already been reset? Or has she come from somewhere else? That's still up for debate. But the reason I still think she's going to be Mirage in some regard is the way Maria Bell spoke about her. She likened her to Ars Magna. Now, who did she previously call Ars Magna? Kia. When she was as equivalent as Mirage. Well, beyond that, really. But it's the fact the Grandmaster called herself a shadow as well. I've got other theories forming there of the idea of, like, maybe she is Adios, but not Adios in the sense of she is Adios. The shadow of Adios, the opposite, something like that. I don't know. Not got enough thoughts on that at the moment, so I'm sticking with Mirage for now. That's where my theories lie at the moment. That's where I think the series is going, with a lot of ideas there. I'll probably eventually get some kind of like proper theory video out, but that's my talking points for now on that. So, on to the third and final section. So, I think it's fair to say my journey through this series has been fairly different to most. I mean, content creator doing stuff on YouTube for one. But thinking back to where it even started, not everyone knows this, but a few people do because they've watched the Let's Play on it. Akiba's Trip. You actually are in Akihabara in that game, and there's real life advertisements throughout that game. And one of them was for this game where there's like this giant city with railways going into it, and there was a horse in a big open green area. What's that? That looks interesting. That was actually the start of me being aware of the series, and then eventually just seeing it pop up in like, oh, it's coming out on like PS4 and stuff like that. I was like, you know what? I'll give that a go when it comes out. It looked interesting, I'll give it a go. Why not? Not having a clue about the bigger, wider series at all. But eventually it started to come around to when it was coming out. I was like, oh, alright, let's look into that. Let's see about that now, because I want to do that for the channel. Because it might do well. Might do well. Might be something people wanted to see. Who knows? I then became aware, like, oh, this is actually that other thing as well that the people are pointing me towards, where it's like I had a poll at one point being like, what do you want to see on the channel? And I only remember there being 2 options. There was like 4 or 5 options, but I remember there being 2 because those were the ones that were bouncing backwards and forwards at the start. And the 2 they were SAO, and we did do SAO because SAO won. I know, but SAO won over Trails in the Sky. And at one point, I really thought Trails in the Sky was going to win. To the point where I bought Trails in the Sky on Steam years before Cold Steel, ready to play it because I really thought that was going to win and be like, alright then, people want to see that? Let's go for it. So yeah, I was sort of aware around then, like, oh, these things are actually connected, they're going on, but not in a massive degree. Sort of like, oh, maybe it's the same series or something like that. You know, that sort of thing. And then I became acutely aware of how they were connected when I started playing Cold Steel 1 on the channel. Oh dear God. Just thinking back to those days, that was not fun. Cold Steel 1, the game itself, was alright. It's good. It's just interesting sort of like school scenario we're going through. It's alright, it's alright. But then the backlash started in the comments and even getting emails and stuff like that that were not nice. Let's put it like that. Basically, it was like an affront to their entire being that I was playing Cold Steel 1 first instead of Sky. There was a lot of hate. It really got to me, really is the best way of putting it. Just the amount of hate for me daring to play another game in the series before another one. Oh no. And that only got compounded further with the idea of me not liking Elisa. Which I still stand by. You're not meant to like Elisa at first. She's meant to be annoying, but then you're meant to see her from a different aspect and understand her character, and she grows and then you start to like her. That's what I feel is meant to happen, but I wasn't given the time to enjoy the game the way I wanted to enjoy it and understand these characters. Just constant barrage of crap for a long while, even to the point where we got to the Nord Highlands. You know how far Nord Highlands is in Cold Steel 1. Yeah, it was still going on at that point, and obviously because I'm not enjoying the game at that point because I got all these people just going on at me, them as we call them, the Nord Highlands was just... It's not a pleasant area. It's very barren. It's very nothing. It's better with Turbo, let's put it like that. It's like without Turbo, I can't even imagine how fun that would be to play at all. It's like, it's arguably the worst area in Cold Steel 1 in terms of like the game itself. So obviously, hit a low with how I was feeling about the game and the backlash from everything going on there. And that's where one person commented, a phrase we've all come to love in our own way as a result. This series is clearly not for you. Now, certain people told them to F off, essentially, just like go away, leave them alone sort of thing, just back off, basically. Let him enjoy the game. So I carried on. It's very much like, I don't feel like I want to go into Cold Steel 2. If this is the kind of reaction I'm going to get from people when I'm trying to play this game, I do not want to play Cold Steel 2. But this is where I have to thank you lot. The ones who definitely stuck around. You've definitely been there. I've seen you be there. You've talked to me. We've done theories. We've had massive conversations. I want to thank you again and again and again. You encouraged me to just hold on. Just do Cold Steel 2. Just get to the end of this story, then see how you feel. Because you can do Cold Steel 1 and 2 as a sort of package. Really. You've got a sort of complete-ish story there. Sure, it carries on and stuff like that, but it's like you could potentially finish there. But I was very much like, I don't feel like going on to Cold Steel 2. I just really don't. But these people have been good to me. I'm going to play Cold Steel 2 for them. I'll at least finish off that bit for them. And as I was going through Cold Steel 2, the hate, essentially, started to dissipate because they left me be. I started to enjoy the game, started to like really get ingrained in the story itself, and that's where the theories really started to hit home. All these ideas we were coming out with and the back and forth with the conversations, it was fantastic. I was loving that. And then I was like, wait, I have an idea. It's a common enough starting point is Cold Steel 1 and Cold Steel 2. And then you go back. And then you have a different perspective on the Sky game. So I was very much thinking, hold on. As an idea, what if I throw this out as an idea? We go through Cold Steel 3 and then go back to Sky and then carry on from there. I was like, that could be fun. That would be a different perspective, different insight into what's going on from a different angle that's not going to be that common. It's got to be something unique, going to be something fun. It's going to be an experiment. Let's do this experiment. So then we got to Cold Steel 3, did that little skit with Sarah at the start where she was berating me for not playing Sky or Crossbell. Just as a little jab from me. And it was like, right, here we go. This is going to be fun. This is going to be the experiment that we're going to be doing here. Still got people going on at me though. Had people coming into the comments claiming that I was lying, that I wasn't going to go back to Sky, and I was just playing Cold Steel 3 just because it had come out now, and it's all about views and greed, and I'm very much like, it's not. I plan full well to go back through Sky. No, this is my experiment. It's like, yeah, sure it is. Like, all right, we'll see, won't we? So, the next part of our journey was going through Sky. It's like, yeah, I wasn't lying. We'll go through Sky. And I absolutely love the different perspective I had, where it's like, again, understanding what Erebonia was and seeing it from the outside point of view. That was fantastic, where it's like, they're talking about this place that I've come to know and like being just treated like this horrible neighbor next door, essentially. And rightly so. Absolutely fantastic. And it's like I really started at that point to understand Falcom's writing and the back and forth and how they built this world and how everything that I knew had its groundwork there. Like, it all made sense. There wasn't really anything I could point to that sort of like, well, actually, that didn't turn out to be that didn't turn out to be this. No. It all still makes sense, which is fantastic. Let's give Falcom credit for that. To build a world like this across this many games where you can play them in a different order, and not only do they make sense, they heighten each other because you understand the world better. And this is where I started to understand the idea of, it's not a story about Liberl, it's not a story about Erebonia or the people in it, it's not a story about Crossbell or the people there, or the SSS, none of that. It's a story about the whole world, the whole of Zemuria. Zemuria is the character. And that's what I got from going through Sky. I finally got that understanding, and I still believe to this day, getting different perspectives on this series, like mine with the experiment, is a good idea. Because then we have different points of view from different people, and we can bring them together and really understand how bloody well written this series is. Absolutely fantastic, and thinking well written, then we get onto Crossbell. It made me absolutely understand why people love Lloyd, is the best way of putting it. Lloyd is absolutely my favourite protagonist of the bunch, including Kevin. Absolutely including Kevin, and Rean now, because, you know, finished his story more or less. Yeah, he's absolutely the best, because of that choice he makes at the end. He has a chance to get everything he wants, and doesn't, and faces the consequences of that, knowing full well what the consequences will be for the people in Crossbell, and the fact he won't see his brother again. He makes that choice. And that's just... I don't know where to begin to explain how good that makes him as a character. It's like, that's a sacrifice. Like, that's a sacrifice if there ever was one. Absolutely fantastic. But there was also another thing we did around this time as well, which was replay the Cold Steels. Because now I could enjoy them. Now we were free of that horrible past. We were free of that, and I could enjoy them, have a new perspective as well, because now I understand what Liberl is, what Crossbell is, and what was coming forward in that series. It's like, we're going to have a new perspective on the entire thing, and it was great. Going through those games again, then opened up my new thought process on the series of, it doesn't really matter where you start. But if you do start the series and you do enjoy it, go through the games twice. Twice. because you will see how everything is connected and again appreciate the dedication Falcom has to their storytelling. Absolutely fantastic. But it was actually around this time as well, when I was getting ready to like redo like Cold Steel 3, I think, that I started to listen to some of the music that was coming out for Hajimari, because that was just come out in Japan and stuff like that. It's like, oh, that's going to be cool. And as we know it now, it is called Reverie, but, you know, it was Hajimari at the time. So I was listening to that and just talking to Sarah about it, and she's like, oh, so what's Hajimari? I was like, well, it's sort of like Chosen the Sky the Third. It's where it's like, it sort of brings all the characters you've known throughout this arc that you've been going through and this world that you've experienced. And it's just a finality to them. It's a goodbye to everything you've known for all this time through this series. And it was just at that moment, I was just listening to the song that's playing right now, that it just hit me. And Sarah was just sort of like, what's wrong? Well, it's just that Hajimari is a goodbye. You've come to know all these characters. The people, the world, the NPCs, the intricacies of how everything works. From Ordis to Port City, to Bose, to Gransel, to Heimdall, even Nord Highlands. This game we haven't even played yet on the channel is gonna hit me hard because it's a goodbye. It's not a goodbye for the series for me at all. Like, sure, we'll have more in the future, but this game's gonna be a goodbye, and it finally hit me that how much I actually care about this world and the story and the people in it. And I was just sort of like there, just tearing up and just explaining to Sarah, it's like, I don't want to say goodbye. Just thought to myself, like, the series itself has covered this, hasn't it? Because no matter how much you love someone or how much you hate someone, eventually you'll end up having to part from them. It goes for everyone. No exceptions. Every day we spend with this series can end up being our last. It's a reality all of us have to face up and fight every day. But that's why we have to smile. When we smile, we don't have to worry about the sad stuff. We could be positive together. We know we're not alone. And everyone feels the same as we do. So, we put on our bravest face and hope to meet them again. Whether it comes true or not, we go back to our lives and keep on going. It's how it is for everyone, I think.